Well, this is my second year of doing this panel. And the introductions are Billy Williams, Ryne Sandberg, Dawson, Fergie Jenkins, and the newest member, Arthur. Oh, you gotta stay. The boys are leaving. It's your seat.
It took too long.
You guys have heard our spiel. This is the Smitty Show.
The fun we have in baseball, huh?
Yep. Well, folks, what do you think of the newest member of the We were just back behind here, and I was asking Rhino about some of the things that go on your very first. You get inducted into the Hall of Fame, and then the dinner. For all of us players who weren't this good, we always wonder, what are those conversations like, the dinners, the hanging out, having a cold, having a beer, and everybody talking. Rhino was talking about it, and how much fun it is to talk baseball with the elite players of the game, and now Lee gets to do that, and it's pretty cool.
Yeah. I tell you what, I wouldn't say, man, it's unbelievable, long time coming to be able to get up here, man. And, the fans I've seen, and we've hung out and known on a first name basis, a lot of them, but to get up here with all these guys, my new team, it's unbelievable.
Very cool. I guess all these guys through the years of what it's like to get that phone call. What was it like?
It hadn't sunk in yet. Oh my God, yeah. Matter of fact, I was so nervous, man. I was thought the vote was on the Saturday before.
You're not really known as being nervous, though. You're pretty slow. You're not a very nervous guy. I'm being friends a long time.
Never, man. But the thing is, you're thinking about the voting, and you listen about the board, and you listen about all the other guys on the ballot and things of that nature. Like, what are my chances? And I tell you what, since my first year that I retired, I was supposed to be a first ballot Hall of Famer. And then I'm like, maybe next year, and you start thinking, well, maybe what next day?
Personality, not that good.
My son gave me a hard time to leave Junior, he's like that. All those things you told me about, how good you were and everything, and I look at the paper, but that'll be true. But just to get that call, man, it's like, it's like unbelievable.
Well, I faced you. You were. Yeah, it's all good.
I played behind him and he was. I couldn't wait for a big lead to take that nice little slow jog in from the bullpen to get those last 3 outs. Sometimes getting 6 outs and 9 outs.
Yes, sir.
But he was he took the ball, he was ready to go, and he was lights out. So we don't have to campaign for him anymore, Hawk. All year long, we've been doing that for years. So now we'll think about something else to talk about. Big Lee's in.
How many dinners does he owe you guys for the campaigning now?
I tell you what, I got to start paying my monthly's phone bill.
Well, I first met Leroy down in Pompano, Florida, when he just signed a contract, and of course, he was a pitcher at the time, and the late John Buck O'Neill and I was down in Pompano, and we saw Lee, from the mound throwing the baseball, and we figured that someday this kid might make it to the Hall of Fame, because that's how good he was at that time. And I think one of the most important things about him, I think if he could have played basketball, he's such a great athlete. If he could have played basketball, I think he would be playing basketball. But we're so happy that he played baseball and pitched for the Cubs many, many years. And to see that they won a lot of games. And to know him when he was young, coming in baseball, there's nobody, in my mind to make me feel happy, more happy than Lee Smith going in the Hall of Fame.
As you look at what we're going to do is talk a little bit, and then we'll open it up to questions. So I know there's some microphones around the room. As you watch our game now, because I know you're in coaching involved in San Francisco, and would you be quiet back there? Lee, how have you seen the closer role change from the time you took over here in Chicago? We, watch you come in and finish out a ball game to what it's like now.
Well, when I first started, it wasn't a closer; it was called a relief pitcher. We didn't have a number of innings or a pitch count thing of that nature. It was the 27th out, But I think it's gotten so now. This left-handed specialist and the setup guy and the 7th, 8th inning guy. I was probably one of my best left-handed setup guys. So I was out there in the 7th inning. And the one thing I got to say that I used to give Jim Fly a hard time about bringing me in, and the game on the line all the time. I think he wanted to make sure that I was awake because I had that reputation of taking a nap during the game. He'd always bring me in. It wasn't a reputation. He did take a nap. But Jimmy wanted, he waited till the go-ahead run of that second before he brought me in the game. I'm like, wow, thanks, Jimmy, but this is the 7th inning. And we had most of the people here in Chicago remember Yosh Kawana was a clubhouse guy here. And I think of all of my saves as a Cub, I owe to Yosh Kawana because he woke me up in the 6th inning. Made sure I had on the right beauty and everything. But it was just the role itself have changed. I think it's gotten so much into the specialist role other than because I think they save opportunity might be in the 7th inning. So if you don't use your best pitcher in that 7th inning, you don't get a chance to use the guy as the closer. But on the other hand, too, I think the guys might be a little fresher, not having 115 innings as a closer when they go to the what we call the wild card and all those different games you have to play. Because a lot of people overlook spring training. Those guys play in 35 games, possibly in spring training, and then you go on through that season, and then the wild card, you can play 200 games in a year. So I think that helps a lot. But just being a relief pitcher to go out there, that was what my role was, and I felt that's what my job was.
Guys, I remember, I think it was 2 years ago, Fergie, you addressed the team. Do you address the team every spring training?
Right.
Okay, so maybe it was last year then. I get down to spring training. It's my first day at Sloan Park, and Fergie's just getting ready to address the entire group. And so they put all the pitchers, I think it was just pitchers maybe.
Right.
Just the pitchers. So he's addressing all the pitchers in Cubs camp. And I just kind of, I'm not a big fan of the pitchers, trying to hit them, especially the really good ones. But, so I kind of walk over and just listen to what Fergie's got to say. And I know, Lee is talking about kind of being two players, right? I mean, you're kind of what you would be two players now. The conversation that Fergie brought up and talked about some of the numbers of things that he did as a pitcher, everybody sitting there, their jaw just went. Fergie, how about some of the stats, innings pitched that you had? How many 300 inning seasons did you have?
I think I had 6.
There was under a handful this year of guys that threw 200 innings this year.
Well, the biggest thing is we only had 4 starters.
Right.
It was Kenny Holson, Bill Hands, Rich Nye, and myself. And Leo DeRocher, he didn't punish us, but we better be in shape to go out there and pitch every 4th day. And that was the fun part of it. I just thought that, hey, if I was going to deserve a job and win ball games and get the respect of my fellow teammates, I've got to be in shape to go out there and complete ball games, which I tried to do as much as I could. But what was nice is that I had teammates like Billy, and I also played with Rhino when I came back. It was just fun to go out there and perform because I had the confidence these guys are going to score runs for me. You can't win without good defense and good runs. And that situation happened a lot for me, and this is the reason why I was able to win and perform as well as I did in Wrigley Field.
Billy, you are on a team that I grew up watching and coming to Wrigley Field many times. Fergie just talking about teammates. Those teams that you guys played on, pretty special group because you stuck together for so long.
They were. I think you never see that again when about 6 or 7 guys stay on a ball club for so many years. In 1959, when Ryne Sandberg first signed a contract, I had played a couple of years, and I was we were down in San Antonio, Texas. And you probably have heard the story a lot. A guy by the name of Rogers Hunter came down and worked the whole team out. And Sandberg and I was on. The general manager, John Holland, wanted him to go in the minor league because we were redoing the minor league, and we wanted somebody to come to Chicago and have Ernie. Ernie was hitting home runs every year. And Rogers Hunter came down, and we worked out a couple of times. He went all through the minor league, and he stopped at San Antonio, and he worked us out a couple of days, and he came back to Chicago and gave Chicago Cubs, the general manager, report on the organization, and he said that you got two kids in the minor league. You got Ryne Sandberg and you got Billy Williams, and you can release everybody else that playing baseball. This was a true story, because the kids were sitting in the stand and said, you could go on and get a job, but you can't play no ball. But joining up with Ryne Sandberg in the minor league, and of course we played AA baseball, AAA baseball together, and then we got a chance to come to the major league and join Ernie in the big league. And of course, from about 1966, we started adding people to the organization. Leo DeRocha came over here in 1966, and I remember the first time Leo came over, we finished, I think it was 6th. And Leo said, this is not a 6-place ball club. And that year we finished 10th. So we started playing good baseball because we went to the Giants, and we signed, we made a trade for Bill Hands, which was another pitcher. And of course we got Randy Hunter, which is an outstanding catcher for the ball club. And I remember standing behind the batting cage, and Leo looked at Kenny Holtzman doing the baseball and said, this kid can win baseball games in the major league right now. He had been around baseball, he knew pitching and knew what it was like. And he told Don Kessinger, our shortstop, he said that if you learn to switch hit, he was a right-handed hitter, and he told Don Kessinger, if you learn to be a switch hitter, I will bring you to the big league next year. And Don went down and worked in the minor league to be a switch hitter. And as you know, he played shortstop for the Chicago Cubs many, many years. I think 3 or 4 times all-star, outstanding player. And we had an individual many years ago by the name of Kenny Hubbs. How many of you remember Kenny Hubbs? Which was going to be an outstanding ball player. I won the Rookie of the Year in 1961, and Kenny Hubbs won the Rookie of the Year in 1962. And we knew we had 2 players that would be on the Major League roster for a long time. And from that point on, matter of fact, when Kenny Hubbs was in a plane crash, we went to Boston and got our second baseman, Glenn Becker. But after we made those trades, it was a ball club that stayed together for 6 or 7 years. We played together for so many years, we knew each other's habits, and we had some great times together. We had a lot of fun together. We won together, and we just enjoyed life. But I don't think at this time you will see a baseball team with about 6 or 7 players play on the same ball club for about 6 or 7 years. And of course, I didn't mention when we went to get Fergie from Philadelphia, which was the leader of the pitching staff. And I think it was said that Fergie pitched so many innings, but nobody knew that he won 20 games. What, 6 times? 6 times, Fergie? 20 games, 6 times. And you know, it was good because Fergie was a pitcher that got the ball, you know, knew what he wanted to throw. Randy Hunter put the fingers down. Fergie threw the pitch. And if we had Bob Gibson pitching for the St. Louis Cardinals, I could plan my fishing trip after the game. We played all day games, and these guys took about an hour and 50 minutes, whereas it take 3.5 hours to play a baseball game.
That's a broadcaster's dream game right there.
Getaway day.
Yeah. Hawk, I got a question for, not really a question, but a statement, and just give us a story. I remember being here in town, and you were rumored to come to Chicago, but it wasn't finalized yet. How about the story about you coming to Chicago, you know, the story about the open contract and all those things, but you deciding you wanted to be a Chicago Cub?
Well, it all started the year before, my last year in Montreal. We were playing day game, and I was out in right field, and a fan just made a statement. He said, "Andre, come to Chicago, we'd love to have you." And I'd always enjoyed Chicago. I'd always enjoyed Wrigley Field, daytime baseball. And I felt, in all honesty, that I would retire wearing one uniform. That was my wish, to just wear one uniform. And I felt, in all honesty, that they would go the extra step to try and sign me, retain me. But it was, of course, during the era of collusion. And they made an offer that I felt was a slap in the face. And it kind of carried over into the off season. And I sat down with my agent. I said, they're not going to budge. You know, I've reached the point where I finally have some leverage. But they're trying to play it to their advantage. So nothing really transpired over the course of the winter. And we were desperately staring free agency in the face. And there were no offers. Nobody reached out to us.
Do you recall what your numbers were going into that free agency?
I remember being on the disabled list. I pulled a hamstring. I was on the disabled list for the very first time in my career. That was my 10th year. Despite all of the knee issues, it was a strained hamstring that put me on the DL. I think I was hitting maybe the 280s. I was having, by my standards, a subpar year. But it wasn't a bad year.
Right.
And the end result was I looked at my wife and I said, well, no one's reaching out to me, so I guess I'll probably go and play in Japan. And she said to me, I'll see you when you come back. So I called my agent, and
How many guys can relate?
So I had to really think this thing out. I said, you know what? I said, it's not really a monetary issue. It's about pride and principle. And if I'm going to have to accept a cut and pay, it's going to be on my terms, where I play, where I want to play. And the team that was at the top of the list was the Cubs. I said, I want to play daytime baseball. I want to play on a natural playing surface. I felt I had better numbers during the day. And I felt the Cubs weren't that far removed as an organization from postseason play. They won in '84. This was '87. They had a lot of the nucleus still intact. That was my number one priority. I met with my agent and we said, we're both thinking along the same lines, and agents never really think the same as a player do. But he said, we can't really go and make a monetary offer. We'll give him a blank contract, which is something that had never been done before. Right. And I realized I was sticking my neck out, but I knew where I wanted to be. And I said, we got a deal. I said, I'm going to go out to Arizona, give them a blank contract, and whatever figure they submit, I'm going to stand up to it and be man enough to say, okay. I just hope they don't put $1. So we go out to Arizona, and spring training had already started. They were actually playing games. Mm-hmm. And I think we surprised some people because no one expected us. And of course, the media wanted to know what was going on. We had a meeting set up with Dallas Green, who was the general manager at the time. We presented the proposal to Dallas, and Dallas didn't really know what to make of it. And he started to go along the lines of, he has some young players that you have to give an opportunity to a look. And I said, Dallas, that's fair and well. I say, but this is what it is. It's not a gimmick. you fill in what you think I'm worth, and I want to be a Chicago Cub. I said, I'm going to leave it on the table for 24 hours. And I'm flying back to Florida tomorrow, and I'm going to do the same thing with the Atlanta Braves. Sure enough, I got a call the next day, and Dallas said, Mr. Dawson, Montreal had actually offered me $1 million with a $200,000 cut and pay. And Dallas said, the best offer we can make is $500,000. And I said, Mr. Green, I said, you know what, I thank you for your gesture, I'll accept it. And he got quiet. I didn't hear anything for about 15 seconds. And I said, hello, and he said, I'm here. He said, can I call you back in about an hour? And I knew what he had to do because he made me an offer he didn't expect.
Stop from having a victory.
Yeah, he expected me to turn it down, but now he got a turd with the commissioner because he's not supposed to make me an offer. And sure enough, he called me back about an hour later. He said, welcome aboard. You know, we're glad to have you. I know you were just out here. Take your time. But I told him, I said, no, in all due respect, I'll be back on the plane. I'll be back up to spring training tomorrow.
Yeah.
When that happens, what do you guys think when you get a new player like that?
Oh, I was ecstatic. Like Hawk said, we were already playing games, and I was just looking around. But to add him to the mix and playing against him all those years, he killed us when he was at Expo. So to have him on our team was fantastic, and he was one of the few players that I watched. If I was ever struggling, I watched Andre, and I watched his approach. I watched him take batting practice from behind to see the pitch coming in, and then see the results of the bat and the ball taking off. Then I'd get in there and emulate that. And that was after I'd already played 10 or 11 years. So he was that type of a player, and I fed off of that, and we fed off of each other. But that year that he signed, 87 was the best year as a teammate, and to be there and watch that 49 home runs, which in that era felt like was about 70, because 35 to 40 home runs would usually lead the league, but the 49 and the way that he did it, it felt like he was hitting a home run every other day, and to be a part of that and watch it and batting practice with him. And then it was just 2 years after that in '89 where everything clicked, and all of a sudden it was myself, Andre, Scott Sanderson, and Sutcliffe were the veterans on the team, and here come this bunch of guys, Dwight Smith and Jerome Walton and Maddox and Girardi and Mike Bilecki. All these young guys came up in the minor leagues, and all of a sudden Don Zimmer was the manager. Before you know it, we surprised everybody in '89, and besides '84, that was the most fun that I had. Those young kids, I mean, they were a lot of fun. I think Andre and I just laughed at them all year long because they were just kids in a candy store, but they knew how to play the game, but they just acted like kids. It rubbed off on us, and we had a great year with Don Zimmer as the manager, using every play in the book. If he even had a thought in his mind, he just put the sign on. So we saw bases loaded, hitting runs. Numerous times with me, he didn't want to bunt with me with first and second, nobody out. A lot of times that's a sacrifice bunt, move the runners up. Second pitch, he'd say, right on second pitch, we're going to hit and run. So first and second, no outs.
Did you look at him like he was nuts?
No, I loved it. I loved it because the first time I did it, I hit a ball right where the third baseman normally was, but he's standing on third base to get the guy was running. I got a base hit and an RBI there. I did it 4 or 5 times the rest of the year, and there was infielders running all over the place trying to cover the bases and all these holes. I just tried to put it in play, and I think it worked just about every time. But that was a great year, and the Hawk was a big part of it.
That's outstanding. Questions now, so there's microphones around the room. All right. Go ahead. We'll start here on the left. Introduce yourself and then ask your question.
All right, I'm Matthew. So you guys always talk about like the call that you get. Do you guys have any stories about that, like where you were when you found out that you were into the Hall of Fame?
How about the newest member?
Yeah, Matthew
just got
home. I live in Glen Ellen, Illinois, And of course, when I got the call from a guy by the name of Jack Lane, at that time was an individual to call you and tell you that you've made the Hall of Fame. And I remember that night, I celebrated with my family. I had a lot of people that I was close to when I played the game, and I had them all over to celebrate. And to get that call, you know, it's really, really exciting. And you go back to time, you played Little League Baseball, and it's just an enjoyable time. But that was the one time that you played the game, not to be in the Hall of Fame. You played the baseball game because you loved it. It's something you did as a young kid, and you got a chance to play and enjoy yourself. And Jack Lane called and put me in, and gave me the word that I was in the Hall of Fame. I was real excited about it, and it was just a great memory.
Anybody else on the stage here?
Well, Jack Lang, he was the individual that for about 30 years called the players. Mm-hmm. And he phoned me on a Friday night and said that I was in the running along with Rod Carew and Gaylord Perry. And he said if I was able to get 75% of the vote, he phoned me Saturday at 5 o'clock. Saturday at 5 o'clock came, and no phone call. And I'm in making dinner for Raymond and Samantha, my daughter. And I said, well, guys, I don't think I made it again this year. 10 minutes later, the phone call comes. And I was ecstatic, just like most of us on the stage here. And the first person I phoned was my father. And I could hear him on the other end of the phone crying. He made the Hall of Fame.
For me, it was kind of bittersweet because it was year 9. It was actually the year that I had the biggest window because everyone who was ahead of me in the voting process was in the Hall of Fame. But I had lost my mom, I had lost my grandmother, who were my chief mentors. My mom always said, it's inevitable, just be patient. And I went through my normal routine that day. I got up, I went to the gym, and I did something I'd never done before. I went by the cemetery to visit both of their graves, and I thanked my grandmother for the part she played in my upbringing, because I called my grandmother Mama, and I called my mom by her name. We were like brothers and sisters. And I visited both of their graves, and I said, something may happen today, and if it does, I'm saddened because you're not here to experience it. And I left the cemetery. I got emotional. I went home, and I can recall telling my wife, the announcement is going to start. The announcement is going to come across about 1 o'clock, and I didn't really want to invite anybody over because, hey, for 9 years it didn't happen, and I didn't want them to be disappointed. Well, it got to be 5 minutes to 1, and then it was 1 o'clock, and there's no call, and I just said, damn. So sure enough, 1:05, the call rang, and I'm standing there and I'm looking at the telephone, and it's 212 area code, and I know the call is going to come from New York. And I was kind of dazed. I was looking at it, and it had rang for the 5th time. And my wife said, "You're not going to pick the phone now."
Time to pick it up.
So I picked it up, and I picked it up, and on the other end was Jack Lang, and he said, "Mr. Dawson," he said, "Congratulations, you're the newest member of the Hall of Fame." And I said, "Thank you, sir." And I hung up and I said, "Thank you."
Go ahead, Ronnie.
The Hall of Famers, I want to thank all you guys, what y'all done for me, playing for the Cubs, and we got to the World Series. That means so much to me. Congratulations to all you guys. I want to ask each and one of you guys, when the Cubs won the World Series, Where were you guys at?
Good question. I know where I was at.
Good question. I was home. I was watching the Game 7, and I actually had an appearance. There was an appearance set up here in Chicago with Fanatics and Uber. If the Cubs won, for me to take over and pass out memorabilia throughout the city. If the Indians won, they were going to do the same thing with Kenny Lofton. So I'm watching the game, and I didn't really want to jinx the team, so I refused to pack. So we get to the 8th inning, and the Cubs are winning. And I said, I better throw something together because I have a 6 a.m. flight. I go in, and I come back, and just that quick, the game is tied.
What is it, Dave?
You know what I'm thinking, right? So now I jinxed the ball club. So then it goes into extra innings, and sitting there, I'm watching extra innings, and the Cubs take the lead, and now I can't sit down. I'm getting up, I'm walking around, watching the game, just walking back and forth, watching the game. And the Cubs win the game, they win the World Series. Now I got to watch the celebration. And this goes on. This is 2 a.m. Eastern time in the morning. And I know I got to be at the airport. My plane is leaving at 6. But I say, you know what? Hey, I didn't even go to bed. This was something worth staying up for. Watching these guys celebrate.
I'll tell you one thing we got in common. I called Game 7 of the World Series, and I didn't go to bed either. I might have been in a little different state than you.
Well, I was home in Arizona watching the television. Now, I'd like to find out who here wanted to break their television when Chapman gave up that home run. I just purchased a 78 screen television. I'm going to throw an ashtray into the TV. And my wife stopped me. Well, I was ticked off. But I was happy that maybe that rain delay was just something that was supposed to happen. And Chris Bryant picked that ground ball up to the first. I was jumping up and down. I mean, I was pretty happy.
I was at home myself, and I had actually got invited to go to the game, but I didn't think my heart could take it. So I'm like, I stayed home, so at least I could turn the TV off and on. And I was like playing for the California Angels when Joe Madden was there. And I'm like, man, I thought me and Joe was like really good friends, but he's trying to kill me with all this. Joe, you killed me, man. But I tell you what, it couldn't have been more fun to see that happen to this city, man. Unbelievable, man. I tell you, it was, like I said, I couldn't have been at the games. I probably wouldn't have made this Hall of Fame thing, man.
What about you, Ronald?
Coombs, I was at. I took in every game that October, home and away. The Giants, the Dodgers, and then the Indians. I rejoined the organization January 1st of 2016. A veteran move on my part.
Yeah.
I left where I managed the Phillies for a couple of years for 2 last place teams, and then rejoined the Cubs right in time for the. If I'd have been with the Phillies and the Cubs won the World Series, I would have been saying, "Damn." When I was at all the games, I did some pregame and postgame throughout the whole thing, and it was a blast. It was a roller coaster ride, as you know.
Yeah.
We almost lost against the Giants.
Right.
Extra inning games, Cueto pitching game 5 if necessary. Dodgers game was they led us in division, and then when the home run hit in the 8th, myself being right there about 20 rows up, first thing that I thought of was, I cannot go through another off season waiting until next year for the Cubs to win a World Series. And they turned it right around, and it was a life changer for me. because it was no longer the questions in Cubs convention or walking down Chicago in June or out in Arizona in spring training. The question the fans would always ask me, are the Cubs ever going to get to a World Series? And are they going to win a World Series? And since 84 and 89, I've said, I don't know. Maybe not. Maybe they're never going to. But that erased all that. And so it's been great ever since. The Cubs knocking at the door every year, the past 3 years after that. And once again this year, we go into 2019 with pretty much a stacked roster, I believe, to stay healthy and doing well.
Unfortunately, I was at home that particular night watching the game. I remember flying to Cleveland the first time we played them, when we went to Cleveland the first game. And I guess I celebrated so much. When I got back to Chicago, I had the pneumonia. And I couldn't go to the second, go to Cleveland the second time. Crane Kenny called me, wanted me to come over. And I said, I can't go. I have to watch the game on television. And watching that baseball game, through the years, you always think something might happen. Let's get down to the last end of the last out, the Cubs win the World Series, and we'll celebrate. But I was watching the game at home, and every pitch seemed like I saw it. And all of a sudden, the ball was hit to Bryant. And I said, Bryant, pick it up, please. Go ahead. And when he threw that ball to Rizzo caught the ball. And I bet everybody in here remember what Rizzo did with that baseball. He took that baseball out and put it in his glove and jumped up and shot. We won the World Series. Immediately, I thought about my teammates, Ryne Sandberg and Ernie Banks. What if they had been here with me to celebrate? They wasn't here, and all the years they tried to do that. I say, they would carry up there, they bought the ring, they did everything they could. We won the World Series. We celebrate. Way to go, Ronnie.
World Series again. We're in it to win it.
Thank you, Ronnie. My name is Mark Edwards. I'm from Terre Haute, Indiana, home of Mordecai Three Fingers Brown, who also performed pretty well in 1908, I hear. I only have it from the old man and relatives. Lee, I tell you what, I'm so happy, and I think I speak for everyone, that you're in. My grandson a year ago said, I'm going to get this Lee Smith's autograph. So I explained to him who you were. He said, what should I have him sign? I said, get a Hall of Fame baseball. And he did. And now I look like a genius to my grandson. Billy, one more thing, something you mentioned. I had the great pleasure to be the visiting team bat boy in 1966 for a short time. You alluded to it a couple times. It was Leo's first year. And we have something in common because you and I were on the field, one of the few that were on the field that day, for the lowest paid attendance in Wrigley Field history, 530 people. Do you realize that? September 21st.
I probably remember that well.
Oh.
We didn't draw that many people, in the 60s when I played. They only opened up the upper deck on the weekend.
That's right.
Sometime when they had Ladies' Day.
And
I wish they prayed Ladies' Day.
And you have 3 Hall of Fame players at least on that team, and you only drew 530 people. Well, yeah, I do. The question I have is, you're going to Cooperstown. I know 4 of you have been there. I don't know if Lee's been there, but the question I have is for each one of you, when you've gone into that great hall with the plaques, who was it that you most admired or were most inspiring to you? Thank you.
Go ahead, Hop. Yeah.
Well, I was just inspired to be and to walk into the plaque gallery itself because you were in awe of seeing history, seeing the greatest to ever play the game, to see that plaques line the hall, and to know that mine is going to be in that presence. You know, it humbled me a little bit even more than I was already humbled, to know that your career has come full circle now, you're in a fraternity that's the best fraternity that you could ever be a part of.
Well, being a Canadian, I've been at the Hockey Hall of Fame, I've been in Canton Football Hall of Fame. I like to go and read the plaques that are basically what the commissioner says a lot of times when they get inducted. But I read Mickey Mantle's plaque a couple of times and Stan Musial, and it's really ironic that they're all from small hometowns. And these guys were hometown players that really got an opportunity to become Major League ball players. And a lot of us here are from hometowns. I'm from a small hometown. Lee, there's only like 10 people in this hometown. And they're all Smiths.
I was going to say. It's a big family, though. That's a big unit.
For me, as a matter of fact, Fergie was the one that actually brought me to Cooperstown doing things with his foundation. And the one guy that amazed to me was Hank Aaron. You know, I go in there, and because one of my hobbies as a player, which most people know that basketball was my first love, but I ended up getting into the baseball thing, and the guy that signed me was Buck O'Neill. So I started collecting a lot of things from the Negro League Museum and learning from Buck O'Neill and Hank Aaron. You know, I think he played like, I read up on, he played like a couple months in the Negro League. And to see this man hit 700 home runs, and what is he, probably about, I don't know, 5'10"? Well, a $185, you know, and that right there inspired me to think about it. You know what, man, those guys did come from that small town like Kirby said. But Hank Aaron was one of the key guys for me.
Rhino?
Well, I just, the first time that I walked around and just looked at the plaques and the names, it's just never-ending name after name, and it's just mind-boggling. Really, the names, it's just an incredible group, and the whole hall, it just keeps getting better and better. But the year that I went in, Sunday night after my speech, and then it's the last night, so this was 2005, my wife and I walked into the Otasaga, the bar downstairs, and that's where the guys kind of hung out in the evening time. So I walked in there, looked to the left, and Bob Gibson was sitting over there by himself. So kind of walked in, I peeked over there real quick, and then I peeked back. You know, I didn't want to see me looking at him. I don't know why, he was a Hall of Famer, but you know, he'd been in there 10 years, 15 years, Bob Gibson. So I whispered to Margaret, I said, that's Bob Gibson in the corner over there. She goes, yeah, it sure is. I walked another 10 steps going away from him. All of a sudden, he called me, Rhino, over there, and I looked and walked over there. He said, here, have a seat. Let's have a beer together. Sat there and talked, and from that point on, our wives connected, and I connected with Bob Gibson in a way that I couldn't even imagine even happening, because I would have hated to face him. Right. Over there, I thought I could throw one up and in or something. I had no idea what he was going to do, but he said, hey, great speech. It was great about respect, and I appreciate that. Years after that, Margaret and I went to Omaha and he cooked us ribs, and we had ribs at his house. He was in an RV passing through Phoenix. We had him over to the house and had dinner, and it's been incredible. So that was one of the connections that I made that I never would have thought even possible. But there's other ones that Big Lee will connect with all these players, and they'll talk baseball, and it's basically the same game that everybody, whether they're 60 years old or 80 or 90, it's pretty cool. You talk the same game about the fundamentals of baseball and what it takes to win, and everyone's speaking the same language. So that's what the Big League's going to experience from now on.
Billy, what about you?
Well, when you walk to the museum, I think it takes the second year for you to realize when you walk to the museum to idolize all those players that hang their plaque in Cooperstown. Because the first year you're so excited, which you will be, Lee. You don't know what's going to happen the first year. The second year you get a chance to walk to the museum and see these particular players who was outstanding through the years of baseball. Not 1 year, not 2 years, but a consistency of 10, 15 years, 20 years down the road. Because that's the only way you accumulate the numbers, enable you to be inducted in the Baseball Hall of Fame. And I think when I first walked in the museum, I looked for Jackie Robinson plaque. And he was an individual, had a lot to do with me being in baseball. He came into baseball in 1947. I used to read about him. I still read about him, look at movies. And then I go to my hometown friend, and Lee mentioned his name. He lived only 2.5 miles from me in a little town, Whistler. He was in Tobinville. And I looked at his numbers. Here's an individual, when you talk about consistency, he never did hit 50 home runs in his major league career, although he became the home run leader of all baseball. And it just amazed me to see what he did through the game of baseball. And all those individuals, you admire all of them in the Hall of Fame because you knew, sweated, they played hard baseball, they did everything they could to win. And everyone you see in that museum, every plaque you read, they had something about themselves. And a lot of times, a long time ago, they had names that you wouldn't know because they call them by other names. And it's just amazing to see those individuals. And I just enjoy going to. I missed one Hall of Fame ceremony. That's when I was living in California. And all the other years I've been there, because I get excited every year when I go back to Cooperstown. It's a tough place to get there, but once you get there, I guarantee you enjoy every moment of it.
Yeah, I have a question. I see all these guys down at spring training every year. I go to spring training every year. And I take a lot of pictures with them. But my question is, I just want to know who, I don't know if this is personal or not, but who are their favorite players on the team today?
Rhino, why don't you're here regular. Rhino's out.
Yeah, I put on the uniform for 6 weeks out there, and I get to know the guys in the locker room, on the bench, during the games, and really get to know them. They have it's a tremendous nucleus that they've had since 15, and they just keep adding pieces that are equally as good. But there's a lot to choose from. I could probably choose a couple every year, and then the next year a couple more, and they have the same guys on the team. There's a lot to choose from. I think they're high character guys. They get along well. They do very well and speak very well of the Cubs uniform and the organization. And they love you fans, and they show that. I've never seen a team and a group interact with the fans as much as this group the last 4 years has done. Autographs before the pregame sprints, before they play catch. They're gracious out in spring training. These guys down at Wrigley Field, the third base line there, they take pictures with fans. It's incredible. It's a tremendous group. But it probably starts with Anthony Rizzo for me, because he was here and endured the 100 lost seasons that some of the other players did not. But I think he really learned a lot from those years, that when the Chris Bryants came up and the Baez's and other teams, other players from other teams joined the Cubs, I would think that he would have a message that, hey, this is really good what we're doing now, because he knew what it was there for 4 years. So for me, he's kind of the leading guy. Of course, Bryant, and then last year, Javi Baez. But there's so many guys to choose from. John Lester, year in and year out, is steady and solid. So I'm just anxious to see what 2019 has to be, because might be 2 or 3 other guys, but it might be a total of the whole team that I would choose from.
I have a question about pitching.
We got a few guys up here that can answer that.
I love pitching, and I really like that 1-0 in the ninth. And so I realized with the advent of the bullpen and closers that things have changed quite a bit. But back in the 50s, 60s, 70s, were pitchers more durable? Or is it really just all about the bullpen and closers? And Fergie, did you ever pitch extra innings after completing a game?
I pitched 12 innings 3 times. I think it was 11 innings. I shouldn't say 12. 11 innings once against Bob Gibson and twice against Gaylord Perry.
Wow.
I just think that in the era that I played, it's not saying the pitchers are any better then and now, but the manager had a little more confidence in you to keep you in the ball game. I knew how to bunt, I knew how to hit, and the number one thing was I was always in pretty good shape to carry over, and I always thought that if the manager had the confidence to leave me out there, I'm trying my damnedest to do a good job.
It's neat. And I just want to tell Ryne Sandberg that I got married on June 23rd, 1984, and I was reciting my vows in between your 2 home runs.
So you saw the game or missed the game? The day game you probably saw it, huh?
I did miss the game, but I was keeping track of it on the radio.
That's awesome.
Question.
So after being inducted, how long did it take for you guys to comprehend it, being in the Hall of Fame?
I have no idea.
Well, for me, it kind of hit home real quickly because, as I mentioned earlier, I felt like it was kind of overdue. It was 9 years in the making, and finally got that monkey off my back. And I can recall, I started on my speech the next day because I wanted to be totally prepared. I didn't want to step into Cooperstown and embarrass myself. I knew I was with the elite to ever play the sport, and I knew these guys were anxious to see, how you were going to screw this thing up. But I just, wanted to make the most of that moment. You only get that stage once in your lifetime, Smitty, and you want to enjoy it. That's your moment. You want to make the most of it, and that was my goal. From then through the summer until the actual day of the ceremony, I was like walking on water because I was filled with excitement and anxious for that moment.
Lee, what about you? Where do you stand with this thing kind of sinking in that you sign your name like today and it says HOF and after your name?
COVID's been tough. It hasn't really sunk in yet. Thank God I got fellas on both sides of me and try to coach me into this a little bit because I don't know whether to put the year first or the HOL first, something like that. I'm trying to figure it out. But it really hasn't sunk in yet. I really appreciate Andre throwing all the pressure on me to start my speech here. I can handle pressure, but thanks, man. But it'll get there, and I listened to a lot of the guys talking. Billy Williams was telling me earlier when we did the round table, he said, you know what, Smitty, it's probably going to sink in when you're in Cooperstown and all you guys walk out from the hotel and get on the bus together.
2 buses.
Yeah, 2 buses. Okay, so that new team that I'm on now, I'm pretty sure it's going to be amazing, but I'm going to try to not embarrass Andre and myself and not screw this speech up.
When you get on the bus, make sure you don't lose your speech.
Yeah.
Because some of the guys are stealing from
Keep it in
you.
the hands, make sure you guys know. If I know this one right here, he put a few jokes on me, so I'm most definitely have both hands on my speech when I get back.
Go ahead, last question. Here you go.
My name is Hayden Joyce, and this one's for Lee Smith. What was your mindset coming into a game? And did you like coming in later or earlier?
I just like to be in the game. Because it took me a while to get the relief pitching thing in my system, because I always like Fergie and Gibby and all these guys were like my eyes growing up, and I wanted to be a starting pitcher. And when I come in, I would much rather a 1-run lead than a 3-run lead, because it seemed to like, oh, I got some things to work on, okay, I want to work on my slider, I want to work on this, and you still got a 1-run lead when you finish. So I always wanted that league where I could always think about one pitch at a time. And having this young man here on my right, a little defense behind me, that helped a little bit. Right? But my mindset was just go out there and do the best I possibly can, make quality pitches, and that good things are going to happen. And to that question before, the young man asked about my favorite player, I mean, for me, I love Kyle Hendricks. I don't know what this guy does. And he's a pitcher, he's not a forward. And that's when I see a lot of guys down, not the Cub organization in general, but a lot of the guys just get up and just let it fly. And this young man seemed like every pitch that he throws, he got an idea of what he's doing with that and the pitch, the next pitch. So that's one thing I love about him.